Here's a question for you guys. When making a skill build, how often do you fall into the same stat-based trap? Meaning, how often do you see your skill build as needing to have skill damage and skill haste? How often do you find, that you're making a healing build and it's just repair skills and skill haste? Or you're making a status effect build and it's status effects and skill haste? But the truth of the matter is that the stats that you actually select for your skill build depend greatly on the actual skills that you are using. Some skills benefit incredibly much from skill haste. Other skills, not so much. For example, in this build, I'm going to be using the artillery turret. And for anyone who's not really familiar with the artillery turret, let's just say that it's arguably the best explosive skill in the Division 2. The biggest reason is because of how many charges the turret actually has, meaning how many times you can actually fire it before the skill goes on cooldown. Now with a tier 6 build and the additional skill mod, you can have 10 shots of the artillery turret. And then once you use all those 10 shots, you generally get a cooldown of 18 seconds or lower. Now of course some of you may think, well, skill haste can drastically improve that, get you to like 10-second cooldowns or whatnot. But think of it like this. You have a skill that is one of the strongest explosive damage sources in the game. You have 10 shots with this skill and a rather short cooldown. And for comparison, if you look at the explosive seeker mine, does the pretty much exact same thing, except the only difference between it is that it follows an enemy and explodes, whereas the turret can basically just traverse anywhere and take out anything. One seeker is pretty much the equivalent of having one artillery turret charge. That's it. And it's kind of the same thing with the sticky bomb. One sticky bomb does deal slightly more damage than an artillery turret round, but it's one shot and then it goes on cooldown. So it doesn't even make sense. And then of course you've got the bombardier drone, but as far as the damage goes, it's not as reliable and not as strong as some of these other explosive skills. And you've also got the firefly, which can be good in certain situations, but of course with enemies being spread out most of the time and it just being kind of a pain in the butt to use to target each enemy, it's not my favorite skill in the majority of situations in this game. And then of course you have the cluster seeker mine, which has an incredibly long cooldown and for the most part is only usable with a hardwired gear set, because that obviously reduces that cooldown significantly and allows you to kind of spam cluster seekers. But still, cluster seekers have their own problems with the way that they target enemies and, miss most of their actual clusters. So combine that with the fact that it does deal less damage as a long cooldown, is it really worth it for you? Now the thing I'm trying to get into here is that when a lot of players end up making explosive builds, what generally ends up happening? Well, you try to find as many sources of explosive damage as you can, you pile on the skill damage and the skill haste, then you pick 2 explosive skills and kind of call it a day. But like I was saying, is it really effective to do it like that? Do you need skill haste in an explosive build? Are there ways to have a skill that actually pairs up with a non-explosive skill for what I would say is a more maximum potential? And that's kind of what I wanted to look at in this video. And of course I am using the demolitionist specialization because obviously I'm getting that extra explosive damage. I'm getting the artillery turret, which is, like I already discussed, one of the best explosive skills. But it also does give me that team bonus for 5% extra damage to targets out of cover for my allies, which many people often overlook. Now for my main weapon, I am using the capacitor. Obviously, when you're combining a bunch of skill tiers, it's a good weapon to have. But of course, capacitance also gives me that increased skill damage while I'm building these stacks. So it encourages me to actually shoot my weapon often. My secondary, it doesn't matter which weapon you choose. I've got the G36 enhanced with reformation that allows me to gain more skill repair whenever I get a headshot. Now, of course, you could go with a different weapon class, but I like the assault rifle for this because obviously it's just a little bit better against heavies and warhounds and that kind of stuff. Now, for my mask, I am using a wyvern wear. Obviously, that is for the 10% skill damage. This mask is rolled in skill damage, status effects, and I have an incoming repairs mod. My backpack is Memento, obviously weapon damage, armor, skill tier. It has, again, an incoming repairs mod, and of course all the benefits that are built into this backpack, which are amazing for a diverse type build. Because obviously this backpack does offer a ton of different extras for a variety of different builds, and that's why this is amazing, because Obviously, that skill efficiency is giving me all sorts of skill-based stats, which come in extremely handy for this build. My gloves are going to be Empress International. I'm obviously wearing 3. This one has repair skills and skill damage. My chest piece is going to be China Light for that 15% explosive damage. It's rolled with status effect skill damage, and again, another incoming repair mod. But my talent is going to be Kinetic Momentum for that increased skill damage and skill repair. Basically, as my skills are not on cooldown, I'm building up those 15 stacks, which can give me up to 30% skill damage and 60% skill repair. Each skill is building 15 stacks. So if you have 2 skills building stacks, that's 30 stacks maximum, which means 30% skill damage and 60% skill repair. And in a way, this is kind of exactly like Memento, and obviously less stats. I'm able to get these multiple bonuses from all of these pieces without necessarily having to focus on a second skill, like let's say the Seekers, that aren't really going to give me the damage benefit as at least as big of a damage benefit as the artillery turret will. And then for my second piece of Empress International, for that 10% skill damage, I also have 10% skill damage and status effects. And then my last piece of Empress International for that 10% skill efficiency, skill damage, and repair skills. Now you can see, of course, that my main stat is going to be skill damage. That's pretty much the focus of every piece. But I also want to have a little bit of status effect and repair skills, because obviously more status effects means longer bleed duration. Now, for me in this build specifically, bleed duration may not seem like a big deal, but if you were in a team situation where you have somebody using the survivalist specialization and they're giving everyone a bonus to enemies that are status affected, then that can be a nice little bonus. Now, looking at the actual fixer drone, when I'm not activating all of my buffs on the Memento backpack, it does have a cooldown of 20 seconds. The duration is 250 seconds, again, without the buff. And then my healing rate is 65k per second. Now, that's just the base. That's without Memento. That is without Kinetic Momentum. That is without the Reformation talent. And that is without the incoming repair mods. When all of those are active, I will be actually repairing for over 200k per second. Something close to 240k armor per second. Now for my artillery turret, again, without Memento buffs or any of the other buffs, got a cooldown of 15 seconds, duration of 390 seconds. It's dealing about 3.5 million damage. And of course I've got a bleed duration of almost 10 seconds with a bleed damage of about 70k. But when you actually look at the bleed on the enemies, I'm going to be hitting for about 150k bleed per tick. And my bleed duration is going to be somewhere around 11 to 12 seconds because of the Memento buff. And the damage that I'm dealing to enemies once everything is active is closer to about 5 million per artillery shot. And let's be honest, 5 million damage per round is going to be more than enough for pretty much any content in the game. I mean, there might be some issues with 4-man legendaries, but honestly, you're still going to be walloping them with a 5 million explosion. Now, this build works really well because it's using the best features of everything. Kinetic Momentum and Memento backpack, and then of course with the skill efficiency from the Empress International, I mean, you're getting plenty of stat range there, right? I'm getting 30% skill damage and 60% skill repair from my chest piece talent. And then the Memento, once it's at 30 stacks, that's 30% skill efficiency. And then with Empress, that's 40% skill efficiency. What you're looking at there with 40% skill efficiency is 40% skill duration. Not really that impressive, but it's still nice for the fixer drone. You're looking at 40% skill haste, which is going to take roughly 4 to 5 seconds off of my skills, depending on the skill. So that's still a nice little bump there. But you're also looking at 40% repair skills, 40% skill damage, and 40% status effects. And to be completely honest, if you ask me, the benefit of having a skill that is constantly healing you completely outweighs any of the benefit of having a lesser explosive skill also equipped. Having a Seeker Mine, or having a Firefly, or having a Sticky Bomb, or having the Bombardier drone, completely irrelevant to the amount of healing that I can have from the fixer drone. And of course, having the fixer drone also gives me the added benefit of constantly being able to shoot downrange at the enemy. So I can use my capacitor like an actual weapon and engage the enemies in combat. Not just sitting there waiting for the artillery turret to go off cooldown, or just sitting there aiming the artillery turret, right? I can shoot while I'm aiming the artillery turret and have a more enjoyable time playing the game. It's just a very good way to actually synergize these talents and this type of build, because it works extremely well, and with these two skills, you get pretty much the best of everything. You get constant healing, and you get the ability to pummel enemies constantly with your explosives. I mean, having 10 explosives go off and then only having, 15-second or less cooldown with your Memento, that's pretty beastly. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoy it. See you in the next one.